Strategic thinking is about understanding the why, the purpose, the desired outcome, the destination.
Welcome back to the Truth HR podcast. I'm your host, Taylor Bradley. Today, we're welcoming back to the podcast Rebecca Taylor, the co-founder and chief customer officer at SkillCycle. When I saw her name on the schedule, I knew this would be a conversation worth diving into. We're unpacking the 2025 State of Skills Report, SkillCycle's latest deep dive into how employees are adapting in a world of constant change, from emerging technology and career uncertainty to AI. So from AI to leadership development, this report offers a surprising look at what employees are prioritizing now and what they're leaving behind. To start, we asked Rebecca, what is the genesis of this report and what readers can expect from it?
When we were looking at the state of the world today, all of the change that's been going on, all of the uncertainty, all of the, you can call it whatever you want, right? There's a lot of chaos that's happening. There's a lot of things to react to, and there's a lot that companies are trying to get right. And there's a lot that employees are trying to navigate too. And when I say chaos, I mean that there's economic uncertainty, there's a change in presidential administration, which is always chaotic, regardless of the situation. But there's also things disrupting our work like AI. And so, we've really been kind of trying to make some sense of what's going on, because for us, we're like, data is something that can help us to find a narrative, find a story, and find understanding. And so that was kind of where the idea for the State of Skills report came from. We actually weren't originally intending to turn it into anything. We were originally intending just to kind of learn a little bit more about what our customers are doing, what our users, what their employees are doing, and using that as a way for us to be better guides and advisors to our customers. And what we found was information that we're like, I think more than just our customers would probably benefit from this information. And so that's kind of what led to it. We're trying to find, I guess, some consistent patterns, some consistent, advice for our customers and for the market to kind of just show up strong for what people need to navigate everything right now.
One of the things I really appreciate about the report, and we'll make sure to link it for all the listeners to grab a copy, is the way that you've broken down some of the change that we've all been through. There was effectively the pre-pandemic, then there was the pandemic era, which I believe it noted here as the Great Disruption, and then now. Can you walk us through at least the first two parts of that timeline of what was back in the day? When I say back in the day, it was only a few years ago.
Yeah.
What happened in the disruption? And then we'll talk about a little bit where we are now.
Yeah. So to kind of even backtrack, we started at the company, we started sort of in beta in 2018. So we did have a couple years of data before the Great Disruption, before the pandemic hit. And now obviously we have information and data sort of since and whatever we would consider after, during, whatever the today is now. And so in the world before COVID, before the pandemic, we were primarily a coaching company. And so our whole mandate was essentially to work with organizations, to partner with employees to help them build their skills, build their careers. And it was a time when, there was people saw potential in what they could do. They saw potential in their companies. It was sort of it was still, when you look back, it was still chaotic in its own way because our world just is. But there was a lot more, I think, optimism and a lot more of a connection to development pre-pandemic in an interesting way, which we could definitely touch on. So what people were doing when we were looking at sort of the types of coaching and the types of learning opportunities that that our customers were looking for. And when I say customers, we work with companies, and then companies have coachees, we'll call, or employees who are getting coached. So it's sort of like a large data set. And coachees in 2018, 2019, even early 2020 were looking to advance their careers. They were looking to see what they could do to grow in their organization, to develop more. And it was really sort of this, forward thinking trajectory for that traditional sort of career ladder. And then came the Great Disruption, then came COVID, which in some ways opened up a lot of opportunities like flexible work, moving to different locations, moving closer to family for some people. And it sort of just gave a different perspective for people on what they could do with their life in changing the way that they work. And what's interesting is in the early parts of, 2020, or the later parts of 2020 and early 2021, I should say, is there was still focus on that career trajectory, that sort of career advancement. But when you look more at the specifics of what people were talking about in their coaching sessions, this isn't us listening, by the way. This is people sharing feedback with us. This is coachees volunteering this information. They're saying that a lot of these career advancement conversations were actually more focused on learning how to work differently. So not so much about, advancing my career to get promoted, but advancing my skill set to show up better in my job and in my role, because either I wanted to grow or I wanted to feel safe. Because remember in 2020, there was a lot of layoffs happening. There was a lot of change. And, there was sort of the great stay that quickly went to the great resignation as people started building back up. But it's just so fascinating to me, just how the types of things that people are looking to learn is so impacted by the job market and by, just the world around them and how they work. Then enter sort of this, post-COVID, post-pandemic life, whatever we want to consider it now. And people are really just kind of questioning everything. They're questioning, what does career growth really look like for me? Is it what I thought that it was before? And do the jobs that I wanted to grow into even exist the way that they did before? And that last question was the one that really kind of gave us a lot to work with, because that is the question that we see people kind of reacting to the most when they're trying to figure out how their jobs are going to change with AI. Not to make AI sort of this big buzzword. There are a lot of topics that talk about it all the time. But, now when we're looking at the things that people are really trying to do, it's really trying to figure out how to navigate this new world of work again. But in doing that, they're really focusing on building those skills that can't be replaced, or those skills that they're going to have to lean into to find their own career growth, but also to perform better in their job as it is today. So there's this balance between looking for growth, but also looking for security and safety, and making those two things kind of aligned in a weird way.
One of the pieces that stands out to me is this distinctive human capability that we have to adapt. One of the things when I was a paramedic that made us so effective on the job was we had a lot of frameworks that enabled us to respond to any type of situation. Mm-hmm. And having a core structure framework, how to approach, identify what was happening, deal with the issue, and provide an outcome, enabled us to respond to a variety of different variables that you could never predict. There was never a training on responding to this specific medical issue inside of a kitchen and a refrigerator fell over and you have to watch out for medical issues. None of that existed, right?
Yeah.
But it was, you approach the scene, you assess what's happening, you determine what the needs are, and you provide an outcome with the expertise that you have. And that got us through every one of those things. It enabled us to be adaptable to the situation. And that capability, I feel, is now more prevalent in the workforce than it ever has been. And certainly all of us have gotten a front row seat of needing to change. But we'll talk about AI for a moment. And the comment you made around, will the job that I do now be the same that's needed moving forward? I actually think that's a very insightful question for employees to have. How did you come across that? And how are you seeing that approach to overcoming that change with employees right now?
Yeah. So it's actually one of the reasons why our customers chose to work with us. So our sample set is sort of biased because they're people who are already kind of bought into the concept, right? They're customers who are like, they see the changes, they were looking for ways to solve it. They talk to us. We sort of, we're like, well, we can help with this. But where a lot of it kind of came from was in conversations around retaining employees and, really trying to figure out how can we help people feel connected to their work, and how can we help people feel like they have a future here at this company, or at least a future in their career, knowing that this is not the age where we're all probably going to be retiring from the companies that we work for now. We just don't live that way anymore. Like eventually everyone's going to leave, your company, and that's okay. So it really kind of started with those conversations there. And, when we were looking at finding ways to help people to kind of figure this out, we realized that we don't know how the jobs are going to change specifically, but what we do know for sure is that they are going to change because they've always done this historically. Even if you look at, I remember when I was a headhunter, I was an agency recruiter, and my job was to submit resumes to my clients, through our resume portal. And that was how I connected to them. And, I could get a phone call right away and send a candidate over to interview with them. But before email, you had to fax those resumes over and then hope that you could get your client on the call and that they would somehow go pick up the resume just in time. Before there were fax machines, you had to get a messenger. There was different ways for you to get this information there. So the technology that we've used to do that job evolved so much by the time I got there. So we've seen that jobs do change historically. How you do those jobs change, even if the goal of that job is still the same. And so that's really kind of the lens that a lot of us at SkillCycle have been using to think about AI, but even how we've been encouraging our customers to think about it is don't think about AI as the thing that's all of a sudden going to make your job completely redundant, but it is going to be something that's going to change how you're going to do your job. And I think the difference between AI being introduced compared to like email from the fax machine is that it's happened so fast and people have had to change and adapt so much faster than the way other technologies changed their jobs before. And, really at the end of the day, what we wanted to do was to help employees see the opportunity to grow, find value in investing in the time, the discomfort, and the trials and tribulations of learning new skills, because it's always uncomfortable. That's kind of the whole point. Like discomfort in this sense isn't bad. It has to be uncomfortable because you're trying new and different things. But so providing sort of that solace and that clarity and giving them a reason to do it. So, it's like if you want to see your career grow, if you're a marketer today and you want to be a CMO in 5 years, a CMO job description in 5 years is probably not going to look the way a CMO job description looks today. So if you're trying to develop according to what it is today, then you could be missing whatever it is in the future. And you could be missing new roles that come up along the way as you build sort of these, these skills and learn how to use these different bits of technology. So it really came from, to answer your question more directly, it really came from like, how do we retain our employees and how do we help them find reason, momentum, and interest in investing in learning these things when they already have a lot on their plate and they're already tired and they're already overwhelmed. So it's sort of that balance of like reason and clarity that helps them get there.
So for context for listeners, in what you and I were just talking about before we get on here was I work at an AI-centric company, and we are on the bleeding edge of working with AI research labs that we know what's going to hit the market 6 months before it hits the market. And even being as bullish as I am on AI, I can say it's still going to be human-centric. The roles will adapt. I agree with you. That for sure is going to happen. And one of the things that I want to emphasize for the listeners that you said that was so spot on. Most technological watershed moments in our history have been linear, where we've gone from fax to email. AI is exponential. So it's going to hit us in waves, and it will go from not impacting to all of a sudden impacting certain jobs. And right now we're working with a very prominent cosmetics brand where I'm going to be going with our team in a couple of weeks to help reskill all of their content folks and their brand management folks to say, here's how you use AI. You're still in the loop. You're still a critical human in the loop. But here's how you're going to do your job now with AI, right? And there's other human skills on here that I like in one table that's called the core skills shift from 2022 to 2025. And 2022 seems like yesterday. And so growing priorities, there's, for listeners that haven't seen this, there's growing priorities and declining priorities. And growing is leadership, influence, and strategic thinking. Declining is career advancement and time management. Could you just sketch out what does that mean, growing versus declining, and what are you seeing in those aspects?
Yeah. So in this way, in this sense, growing priorities means an increase in people expressing interest in learning those skills compared to declining, meaning that these aren't showing up as much as they were in the years prior. So we see more people saying that they want to focus on learning leadership skills, influencing skills, and strategic thinking skills now. And less people are saying that they're coming to coaching looking for career advancement or looking to figure out and build time management skills, for example. I was completely surprised by the decline in time management because everyone I know is really busy all the time, right? And that's sort of like the blocker for a lot of folks to getting things done that they want to do. So when we looked a little bit deeper, the decline in time management is because the skill of time management is learned differently now. It's learned through strategically thinking about where to spend your time, strategically thinking about what technology you can use to maybe delegate some of the work that you've had to AI, or learning how to influence others to come into help with some of that work too by delegating, delegation through leadership, things like that. So it's interesting because the things that we're also finding are that the decline in career advancement as a priority to me doesn't mean that people don't want to advance their careers. To me, it means that they're focusing on building the skills that are going to help them advance their careers. So instead of focusing on career advancement as a topic, they're coming here saying, like, I already know that I have to build my leadership skills. I have to build my influencing skills. I have to build my strategic thinking. They're coming to this experience with more clarity around what they need because, our platforms also evolved in when we first started to collect this data to now. And, now folks are coming into coaching with an IDP. They're coming in with a roadmap for what it is that they need. So there's more clarity for them on where they can spend their time and what those specific skills are. And they're getting themselves ready. I think the thing that blew my mind is that, the whole narrative is that AI is coming for you and your employees aren't going to be ready and you better get them ready. And, we see this as like, actually they're getting ready. Like they're getting ready. Is your organization ready to have all these people with all these soft skills now who know how to lead and influence and collaborate better?
Yeah. And the thing that we've noticed in our organization is employees are actually, this is top of mind for them because it's how's this going to impact my livelihood? And may often be ahead of leadership teams. I think that's what's been really interesting in our working with our clients. Now, a couple more quick items for you here. Strategic thinking. And perhaps I'm taking us down a rabbit hole. I've struggled with early on in my career. I kept saying, I want to be strategic. I want to be strategic, as if it was something that you did differently than your day to day. How do you define that for emerging talent to make that more tangible of what adding strategic value looks like?
Yeah. It's actually one of the most annoying pieces of feedback that most HR people get, I think, is just like, you have to be more strategic. Like, well, what the heck does that mean? So strategic thinking is kind of one of those, it is a nebulous term. It is, sort of widespread. When we break it down, I actually don't think this is a rat hole. I actually think this is like a really good sort of, topic. Strategic thinking is about understanding the why, or it's about understanding the purpose, the desired outcome, the destination, and then building your plan to get to that destination from there. The other ways you could think about it is sort of being more proactive versus reactive, but that can also sometimes, it's hard to kind of really know what that actually means. So it's really about just sort of getting what it's all for, figuring out like, okay, what are we trying to accomplish here? And then sort of using that as a way to work backwards to build sort of that map to get there.
I was writing that down. I'm definitely going to go back to that quote in my head because I get asked that so often. I'm looking for just the TLDR and you nailed it.
Yeah.
So final two questions for me here is those not familiar with what SkillCycle does. Can you walk us through that?
Yeah. So SkillCycle is essentially a talent development platform. So it combines both performance management and development to give you sort of this one platform that delivers both sides of that development equation to every employee in your organization. So essentially you can run a full performance process, understand people's strengths, weaknesses, gaps, generate an IDP. So we'll automatically generate an individualized development plan for every single person in your company. So they have that map. They can be strategic about where they want to spend their time and what they want to develop. And then our platform connects them to resources to help them act on that plan. Now, resources shows up in a context of, we have an AI supporter, an AI companion named Ada. And Ada is part of generating this IDP. Ada is sort of your guide to help you make sense of the world and give you sort of that map to kind of get to where you need to go. Ada also can act in ways as a coach. So you can ask Ada questions about how do I write this development plan? How do I create goals from this? How do I prepare for my one-on-one with my manager? What are some things that I can do to prepare for this? So Ada can help to answer some of those questions for you. It also provides resources. So we do have content on things like developing specific soft skills. So giving and receiving feedback, critical conversations, that all sort of ties to some of those resources that folks can have. That sort of is the jumping off point from those performance management conversations. And then finally, we have a whole marketplace of human coaches too. So Ada's trained as a coach in the way that you can train AI to do things. But we also acknowledge that, something you said earlier, Taylor, that I completely agree with, is that AI is a tool. It's not going to replace the human component. So you still are going to need humans as part of this. So Ada can also help to connect you to human coaches so that you can interview folks, you can sort of see, how they might help you with the things you're trying to accomplish, and then actually, pair with a coach and have regular coaching sessions with them, all supported by your development plan to kind of give you some of that clarity too.
I love that. We have an AI team member called Alan. So Alan should meet Ada.
Alan. Alan and Ada can be new friends.
Exactly. This is great. Final question for me to wrap us up here. If people want to reach out and get a copy of the report and or reach out to you, what are the best ways to do that?
So I live on LinkedIn. When my mom asked me what I do for a living, I'm like, my job is to meet strangers on the internet and make them my friends. So I'm on LinkedIn all the time, so definitely connect with me. You can also email me, Rebecca@skillcycle.com. I'm also in the Troop Forum, so if you see me there, feel free to come say hi. And, I'm happy to send our State of Skills report and any other sort of thing that might be interesting to chat about. I always say that I'm always down to have conversations, especially because I learn the most from those conversations about the challenges HR is facing and exactly what people might be looking for in general. And I have a lot of resources and connections too. So please don't be shy.
I second that. Reach out to Rebecca. Great individual to have in your network. Check out the report. Rebecca, thank you for being on the podcast.
Thank you, Taylor. Thank you for having me. And thanks for listening, everybody.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Troop HR podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, we encourage you to subscribe and leave a 5-star rating. If you would like to learn more about our community, please visit troophr.com. In the meantime, keep living the dream.